Hey, I'm Brad from ChurchMediaDesign.tv, and we're going to look at how do you create this vintage stamped type effect that you can reuse over and over again inside Photoshop. Well, vintage textured text isn't going away anytime soon, and it's a great effect that you can apply to your designs. But I wanted to look at how do we get past just a plain old texture applied to your text and get to something that feels like handmade, something that's been stamped down, and something that feels a little bit more authentic. And we're going to do that inside Photoshop. So inside Photoshop, let's go to File, New, and we're going to create a 1280 by 720 widescreen document, and we'll just call this one Stamped. Next, we need to create a background color, so I'm going to go down here and we're going to create a new adjustment layer of a solid color, and we're going to make this white. Next, we need to make a layer for our text. So let's go down and we're going to create a new layer instead of just using our type tool. The reason we're going to do this is because we're going to need multiple copies of our text for this effect to work properly. And instead of just copying and pasting different text layers, we're going to use a smart object that contains a text layer. That way we can go inside our smart object, alter that text, and it will update it anywhere we've used that smart object. You can kind of think of a smart object as a document inside a document. The way we create a smart object is by right-clicking on a layer and going to Convert to Smart Object. Now we can double-click on this, and basically it's just going to warn us saying that we have to save any changes to the new document it's bringing us into before we'll see those changes reflected in our main document, or what we called stamped. So we'll hit OK, and now we can grab our type tool and type out some text. Now we're going to be using this Vincent typeface that I found on Dribbble that's totally free, and I'll include a link to this in the show notes. So now let's go in here, and since Easter's right around the corner, let's just write out the word Easter, and let's grab this guy and do a little Command or Control T, and let's scale this up. So we'll scale this up to a decent size, and then to get it centered, I'm just going to pull out a guide real quick, and it will snap to my center, which is 640, and then I can free transform this guy and nudge it into place so that it's nice and centered for us. So now we can save this document, and then when we go back to our stamped document, you'll see we have our Easter text on our white background. So now we actually need to apply our texture to our text. Now there's a lot of different places online that you can grab textures from, but I wanted something that was actually like ink or a stamped look to it. So I searched around and I found this great free texture on makemark.co.uk that you can download, and we're going to grab one of these. So this ink rolled 5, I'm just going to copy this image, and then let's head back inside Photoshop. And then in here we can paste this in, but we actually want this to be applied to the text. And the way we're going to do that is via a mask, because we want this texture to actually create some transparency to our text. So what we need to do to create a mask is go into our layers palette, and we're going to click the new mask button. And then to paste this image inside of this mask, you need to Alt or Option click on the mask of that layer, and it will bring you inside of that mask. Now we can paste our texture in. I'm going to zoom out just so I can see a little bit better, and then I'm going to transform this and get it lined up the way I want it. So we kind of have like a dark line in the middle there, so I'm going to just kind of keep that as my bottom and just scale this guy down just a little bit until we're kind of bottom to top there with our texture. Now you can fiddle around with this as much as you want, but that'll be pretty good for us. Okay, so we can deselect that, and then we're going to Alt or Option click again on our texture, or we can just click on our layer and it will bring us out to our text. So what you're seeing right now is a textured version of your text, and it's actually created transparency for us. So if I remove this background layer, you'll see that we actually have semi-transparent text. Now let's zoom in a little bit. And what's happening is anything in our, so let's go back inside our mask. So anything that is white is something that's able to be seen, it's opaque, and anything that is black is transparent. Now we have a lot more black than white in this image, so what I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to invert this. So I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, and then Invert, and we're just going to invert this. And then let's head back out. So now you see we have a little bit darker version of our text, and then we can actually start fine-tuning this. So what we're going to do is apply some level effects to this mask. So we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, Levels, and now we can start messing with the histogram here to fine-tune how much grittiness we have in our text. So I'm just going to fine-tune this for a second and just kind of get it to a place that looks decent to me. So let's say we just want enough that it's obvious that it's sticking through, but we don't want so much that it's crazy. So, maybe something in this range here looks pretty good. Now the cool thing is we can unlink this mask from this layer, and I can move this texture around and kind of line it up exactly the way that I want it. So I can get a little bit more texture in certain letters or a little less in certain letters. And you can actually go back in and paint in this to get rid of some texture or add in some more texture later if you want to. But the next thing that we need to do is actually create this effect of it having this stamped look. Creating a texture on a text is pretty simple, and there's a lot of ways to do it. But how do we make it look like this stamped effect? Well, one of the keys to the stamped effect is that the outside edges of the text are solid. They don't have any texturing to them, and all the texturing's happening on the inside, and there's just little bits and pieces of it. So this is where we need to make a copy. So I'm going to drag a copy. In my top layer, I'm going to delete my mask, and let's just work on our top layer. So I'm going to turn off the eyeball switch for my bottom layer. And this top layer, what we're going to do is apply an inner shadow to it. So I'm going to go to Effects, and we're going to go to Inner Shadow. Now to see this shadow and see what we're doing, we need to go to our blending options and turn our fill opacity down. So now we're only seeing the effects, not the original object. So then we're going to just make a few adjustments. I'm going to turn my opacity all the way up so black is actually black. I'm going to take my distance and move it down to 0. And now we can take our size and move it up. And basically what you're seeing here is anywhere that's white inside the text is where the texture will show through, and anywhere that is black won't have any texturing to it. So we can start messing with our size and our choke amount to get this lined up and looking the way that we want it to. So we can maybe take our choke amount and our size up just a little bit more, and we can fine tune this later. So maybe this is just slightly too much. So we'll call that good for now. And then let's turn on our other layer, and you'll see how it's got more of that authentic stamped look to it. The edges of our text don't have any texturing, but the inside does. Again, we can go inside here and say, well, I think I want it a little less textured on the edge. So I'm going to turn my choke amount up a little bit more. And we're going to turn my size up a little bit more, and we can kind of fine tune how that looks. So we'll call that okay. The other thing to really make this pop is we're going to apply some sharpening to our original texture. So I'm going to grab my texture here on this layer, and I'm going to go to Filter, down to Sharpen, and then Sharpen More. And this will really just kind of make that texture pop and make it look a lot nicer and a lot more authentic. Now what happens if we want to change the color of our text? We could go back inside our Smart Object and change the color of the text here. But I want to stay inside this document, so if I'm testing out colors and backgrounds, I can work more quickly. So the best way we can do this is we're going to create a new group. I'm going to move this group up here, and I'm going to move all of my text layers inside of this group. So now we can, name this group our title. And then we're going to create another adjustment layer of a solid color, and we're going to make this white. And we're going to say that this is only going to apply to this group. So we're going to Alt Option click on that layer, and it's now only going to apply to that title layer. Now we can go down to our background layer, make this black, and you can see how we can quickly and easily change the color of this text. Now to show you the power of using the Smart Object, I'm just going to quickly go into this document here. I'm going to grab our text here, and I'm going to type the Pacific Pacifico font and, you know, make this lowercase Easter. And let's go back, let's save this and go back to our stamped effect. And you can see how it quickly and easily makes it look the way we want it to, no matter what typeface we're using or what it says. So you can save this as kind of a preset document and use it later. So I'm going to go back here. I'm just going to undo my changes, save that, come back, and we're ready to go. So now let's finish this out and add kind of a vintagey background and just kind of bring it all together. If you've never been to unsplash.com, they have amazing high-resolution photos that you can do whatever you want with, and they have a new filtering system. Make sure you switch to all when you do your search so that you search every photo they have, not just their featured ones. But you can search, and I searched for clouds because, you know, clouds and Easter go together pretty well, and I found this nice graphic here with some mountains and some clouds that I really liked. So we're going to copy this image, head back to Photoshop, and then we're going to paste this in. Now we can do our free transform, Command or Control T. I got to zoom out so I can grab my handles here, and let's get this text or this image lined up the way that we want it. So, you know, maybe something like this. I don't want to see that road, so I'm going to scale it up to a place where I don't see the road, and then we can nudge it over and kind of center Easter in those mountains. So that's looking okay there. Now we need to kind of make the image a little more vintage, and we're going to use a really simple trick of some curves adjustments. And if you've not done this before, this is a really handy one just to add some a nice style to your photo. So we're going to go here to our adjustments. We're going to add a curves adjustment. The first thing I'm going to do is darken the whole image by just bringing this down a bit. And then we're going to apply what's called a cross-process effect by doing a few S-curves. So we're going to go to red, and we're going to do a S-curve on our red. We're going to go to green, do another S-curve on our green. And then for a proper cross-process effect, you do an opposite S, so I guess a Z-curve on the blue, but I don't think that looks that great for this image, so I'm just going to pull the whole thing down and just kind of warm it up a little bit. And it's starting to look pretty nice. So we can go in, it looks like our image needs to be nudged up just a little bit. So that's looking pretty cool and pretty nice. Now let's add a little byline here just to kind of bring it all together. So we're going to go back inside of our smart object. I'm going to make sure I don't have any layers selected. I'm going to grab my type tool, and then we're going to grab our Pacifico font, which is also a free font that I'll link to in the show notes. And we're going to just type in period, he is risen, period. And this one we're going to put a space between. Then we're just going to grab our character stuff here, and we're going to change the line height and move this up to, you know, let's say 45.92. Copy that and then paste that in here. And then our spacing on this end is a little tighter than the other end, so I'm just going to move this a little further away so that our dots are about even. Okay, so we can close out our character palette and we can get this all centered up. So let's move this and get it centered. Now instead of just having this be a straight line, we have some warp effects with our text tool. So with our text tool selected, we're going to go up here to our text warp effects, and I'm going to create a arch effect. Now the default arch effect is 50 and it looks terrible. So we're going to go down to maybe like a negative 12 or 13 and hit OK, and that looks pretty nice. And then we can just move this up just a little bit so it's a little closer. And we'll save that and come back out here. You will notice that our text down here is not textured, and that's because the inner shadow that we have going on this top layer of our text is a little too strong, and so we can't see any of this texturing come through. So the way that you could change that is you could duplicate and make another smart object with the He is Risen text and make a custom version of the texturing and the inner shadow for that because it's a little smaller, or you can just leave it as is because it looks pretty good. The only last thing that we might want to do is go in here and grab our color picker and change this to just a little bit more muted, like yellowy tan color, and add that in just so it kind of blends into the background a little bit better. So that's how you make that stamped effect, and as you can see, you could save out kind of a presetted file that you can easily apply this to text on all sorts of different designs and styles, and you can make announcement graphics and series logos, and it all just makes it look a little bit more authentic and a little nicer. Now, if you have any questions or comments about anything that we went through, or you're looking for the links to the different textures or images or fonts that we used, make sure to check out the show notes at ChurchMediaDesign.tv and leave any questions or comments you have wherever you're watching this video. We'll see you later.